It's time for the Volquest Mailbag Podcast, answering your questions from the General's quarters every week, right here on Volquest.
Good Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com mailbag edition of the podcast, presented by our good friends at Smoky Mountain Organics, East Tennessee's most trusted health and wellness store, focusing on natural products and organic remedies to a variety of ailments that you're dealing with. So check them out at throughout East Tennessee at one of their 4 locations at Smoky Mountain Organics. You can check them out online at SmokyMountainOrganics.com. Those 4 locations in East Tennessee include Knoxville, the one at 8818 Kingston Pike, right across from Trader Joe's, and then, of course, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, and Sevierville. Don't forget to tell them if you're buying in-store that you're there because of Volquest. They'll give you 15% off of your in-store purchase. That's at Smoky Mountain Organics. Plenty to get to in this mailbag edition of the podcast. We got lots of questions with Austin Price and Rob Lewis. Guys, you ready? Here we go. How about that? Right into it we go. Austin, let's go recruiting here. Any early rumblings on high school targets for the late signing period? Moten, Dudley all come to mind. What do you think Tennessee looks at? What do you think they look? I'm going to try to combine a couple of questions because some of these are similar. In terms of high school prospects out there, we saw Jordan James did not sign, which was kind of interesting. He did not sign with Georgia. What do you think Tennessee looks from a high school standpoint? Jordan James a factor there? How do you think this thing plays out with high school guys in January?
I can't see them taking the third high school back. Could they go with an older guy? Maybe if the right guy fell their way. For me, I look at Ahmad Moten, South Florida defensive lineman that Rodney went and saw several times over the last couple of weeks when he was down there seeing Akis. And then EJ Lightsey, former Florida commit linebacker, isn't going to sign until February. I could see Brian Jean-Marie trying to kick the tires there.
And then we'll see who else jumps up. And is there a fact? What position-wise, high school-wise, don't you think defensive back, if they found somebody that they like? Now, I don't know if there's going to be a defensive back available that they like. I think they exhausted that look pretty good. But from a position standpoint, defensive lineman, defensive back, probably if they go wide receiver, it would have to be I think a transfer portal guy, given what they got done, much the same way you would go, I would think, in regards to a running back as well. But from a high school standpoint, DBs, D-line, linebacker, would it be defensive guys, you would think?
Yeah, potentially defensive line. Although I could see them wanting to go with a kind of a plugger in the middle defensive lineman. I think linebacker and potentially a DB. But even then, I just think the spots in the high school ranks are going to be very limited in the month of January as far as who they legitimately look at.
So you think more transfer portal in the month of January?
I do.
With a focus on, from a recruiting standpoint, on
all the things you just mentioned, offensive and potentially offensive line. Again, a lot of that'll depend on Cade. People have asked, they asked on Wednesday night, Brent, about, Gerald Mincy. Gerald Mincy's going to be here sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. All right, let's go to DMC Vol. I get the problems with in-state kids recruiting this year, but how did Tennessee knock it out of the park in the state of Georgia? Scratching my head, he says. How did they have success in Georgia but didn't have success in the state of Tennessee?
How many of those guys were Rodney guys?
Not as many as you would think. Obviously, he was heavily involved with Tyree West, but when you look at Josh Josephs, that was Brian Jean-Marie and Mike Eckler and Rodney a little bit. And then the DBs were really, Willie and Banks, and Justin Williams was Jerry Mack. So not as many as you'd think, but Willie did really well. Hypo alluded to that, Rob, in his Wednesday press conference. Now they're not hearing, all the talk like the in-state kids were.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I'm surprised. I had never really thought about that. Hubbard, had you?
No, I mean, honestly, I thought just most of the in-state kids in Tennessee were just off the board so fast that they came off the board before they ever really got a shot to see what Tennessee looked like, because so many of those guys committed in spring and the early part of summer. Rob, here's the other thing I wonder a little bit about the state of Georgia. I think Brian Jean-Marie had recruited in the state of Georgia throughout his career a bit. We know Rodney has. We know Willie Martinez had. I don't think the staff that Josh Heupel put together had been working the state of Tennessee a whole lot the last couple of years. And so I think for some of those guys, it was easier in other states because they had more ties, more recent ties to other states, in particular the state of Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that at all. And I thought that it was pretty logical what Josh said today about, some kid in Georgia or some kid in Indiana, like Taven Jackson. They're not hearing about, the NCAA investigation, all the uncertainty, all the negativity that is getting spewed constantly, on sports talk radio or in the media. Like some kid in Murfreesboro or Nashville is going to be hyper aware of all Tennessee's issues.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. All right, to the next one we go. Do we start to see things pick up with the portal with the early signing day over with? We know a couple of guys that Tennessee's heavily involved with. Mincy, as Austin's already mentioned, expected to be here sooner rather than later, I would think. Versus another guy that we've seen. I'm curious, Austin, about the defensive lineman from Oregon that's originally from Alabama that went in the portal today.
Allen, right?
Yeah, he's a guy that Auburn recruited. I don't know how much Rodney Garner's got interest there or doesn't have interest with that. I think in terms of portal picking up, it's got to be more guys going into the portal. I think we got a pretty good idea of guys Tennessee likes that have been in the portal. When you talk about Mincy and you talk about Verse.
Yes, agreed. I think there'll be a January run of kids that go in the portal. Much like, kind of there is, you have this like in season, like the kids that aren't playing that are just wanting out, they go in season. Then you got the end of the season, then you got the end of bowl game run, and then you got end of spring practice run. So like, I think there'll be a January run. Tennessee will see what's there, act, not act. And then they may hold some spots, for that post spring practice run, like they did last year.
I think you have to, because Rob, I just think there's going to be some more good players.
I think your better players are going to go January or post spring more so than even post season or during season.
Yeah, I mean, I think with all the coaching changes, Rob, you're going to have a lot of guys who are going to wait and go through spring and may go, you know what, this doesn't fit me. This style doesn't fit me, or this system doesn't fit me, or I don't relate well to my new position coach or that position coach. I just think there's a chance to be some pretty solid players, some guys who can help you post spring practice more so than even what's out there right now. Again, Tennessee likes a couple of guys right now out there, but it's not like Tennessee's got 8 on the board that have been in the portal for the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think that you'll see a lot more movement. I think after spring practice than in January.
Yeah, I think so too. Any fun stories you can share now about kids that signed today? Doesn't have to be a UT signee. Hey, P, you got any fun stories you're going to hold out to? I mean, I was thinking about this today. I mean, you and I were going to, gosh, I don't know what high school we were going to when the word about Taven Jackson.
We were driving to Riverdale from seeing Caden Pope.
Oh, that's right. We were coming from Savannah, going those back roads.
That lovely ride from Savannah, Tennessee, up to Murfreesboro.
That's exactly right. When that one came about, and you dispatched an army of the boys to work on story, and got him on the phone while we were driving that way, and that was kind of one of the first. I mean, my biggest takeaway, and I went back and looked at this on Wednesday night as the story I was writing looked at. I mean, from the week of Thanksgiving through the early signing day, Tennessee got 8 commitments. 6 were on defense, 2 were on offense. This is not a story, but prior to that, they had not had a commitment since August. I mean, that in the fall, that's an unheard of drought. When you talk about you go September, October, and basically robbed the month of November almost without getting a commitment.
And you're having kids on campus.
Yeah.
Pretty,
I mean, that's a crazy drought.
I'm just going to go back. Before we move on, I remember the Taven Jackson story. I remember talking to an out of breath Austin Price with instructions to call a high school coach and get quotes.
Because we were up against it, and the kid was going to go, and I was like, we did the interview driving down the road. I sent it to Ben to write, and called Rob and said, I need you to call the coach and do impact. I'm not sure where Kane was at that point. Bellied up to the bar somewhere, I guess. That's about where I've been the last week and a half.
Yeah, we were like driving through a subdivision or something. It was, I don't know what road we took to get from Savannah, Tennessee to Murfreesboro. I was following the little dot.
That's after we had taped the Caden Pope commitment interview that was going to run about a month later, and then it never happened.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That one was recorded at Savannah and never saw the light of day, obviously. By the way, Caden Pope did not sign in the early period, which was a little bit surprising to me. Any surprises for early signing day that you didn't see coming?
Oh, 2 days ago, I didn't see James Pierce signing.
Yeah, me either.
I knew there was a chance that went up on Tuesday. And then, of course, by 7 a.m., they had gotten papers, and that's when I had to start we'll go take it to 50-50, even though it was already 100 and I'd done the interview with the kid. Because I didn't want to spoil his moment, but I also wanted to kind of give the general's quarters a little something. Because, heck, man, it had been a wild 24 hours, and everybody was ready to fight each other. And I was like, man, these guys need something to hang on to.
I texted you guys Saturday night because I had talked to somebody that, a guy at one of our other rival sites who was at his state championship game and talked to him. And the kid told him he was signing in February.
Yeah. And
so hats off to Tennessee staff for turning that around.
Yeah, they got that. That's the one that was, I'm not saying I thought Tennessee was going to get West, but Austin and Rob both. We've seen enough Rodney Garner through the year that you never know what's going to happen the last 2 or 3 days there when that thing was going down. But the one was Pierce. I would have. There's no way I thought Pierce would have signed early. That he was going to do that based on what he said Saturday, based on the feeling I had. That's the biggest surprise to me. Deshaun 13. How did this class make the roster more talented? How big is it that most of these guys are early enrollees? Rob, I'll ask you because I asked Austin this on the 2-minute drill. When you look at this class, what do you like about this class? What stands out to you?
That you have a quarterback with potential in it, I think it's got to be the first thing you say, because we all talk all the time. You've got to take care of that position. To me, it's hard to tell on high school tape, but I think they brought in some pretty intriguing skill. I like Sampson. I'm intrigued by Squirrel White and what he can do in this offense. I think they got better at the skill spots there. You got to like Williams and what he potentially brings. And with Pierce in the fold, really like the edge guys. I think he's got, what is he, 6'5", 220?
Yes.
He's got
long.
He's got some long levers, man, and it seems like he's got a really good burst. And I think Hubbard, I guess was it you that asked the question today about, you got to be able to affect the quarterback. It looks like Tennessee got some guys that can do that with the 2 dudes they picked up today. I think Joseph has a chance to be a real speed guy off the edge, but off the top of my head, those are the ones that jump out to me. Improved skill, got a quarterback that you can potentially build around, and think they really helped themselves in the front 7 with some explosiveness.
As David Cutcliffe told me years ago, speed never had a bad day. I think Tennessee got better across the board on this roster from a speed standpoint in this class, and I think that was Austin a huge priority. How big is it that 13 of the 20 are midterm enrollees? How big is that, Austin?
I think that's big, just because you get them to go through, spring ball with you. They get accustomed to, practicing at this level. You get them in the weight room early, and then that way when you get to the summertime and then fall camp, it is far less of a kind of a shock value for these kids. They've been there, done that, and they're ready to go to work.
How significant is Hendon Hooker's return from a leadership standpoint in the off-season program compared to last year when the position was so unsettled? Rob?
I think it's big. I think continuity is big anytime you can get it at that position. When you're talking about capable continuity, I mean, a guy that's proven he can play, I think, it really felt to me like he had really won the respect of his teammates, not just with his play, but I think how he handled not being named the starter coming out of fall camp and then kind of earned the job when his chance did come. The way he carries himself, I think it's a big deal. I mean, everybody talks about culture. Coach Heupel talks about culture quite a bit, but I think Hooker is a good, building block inside that locker room to have, I don't know if your best player, but certainly your most visible player, be a guy who really represents that culture that you're trying to build.
What is the reason behind your thought that bowl practices don't help the early enrollees? Seems like it would really help them get an idea as to what's to come before spring practice. I was the one that said this, so I'll take that question. I do think it gives them an idea of what practice looks like. Don't get me wrong. But in terms of guys making a huge difference with 4 practices, I don't know that it's that significant. And that was kind of my point with that. But we'll see. Here we go, Austin. Give me some 23s that can make an early decision or make a decision early part of next year.
Well, I mean, I think Caleb Herring does something by March. I mean, what's early? I mean, is March early? I mean, I think a guy like Nico, and I forgot how you say it. Hold on a minute. Iao Maliaba. I think he does something, by March or April, and to me, he's the clear-cut number 1 quarterback on the board. He's a program changer at the quarterback spot. So, those are early. I think you'd like to get Deshaun Bishop in early if you could. I think the most of these, you start hitting some of these in-state kids best you can. See, you can knock down any, big pillars. Herring's the biggest pillar of them all in state, and it's not close.
All right. Speaking of in-state, he wants to know over and under 6.5 Tennessee kids in next year's class. Never seen one, Paul. What? I half a boy. There's your Andy Griffith reference for those of you who don't know that episode. You taking the over or the under?
Push.
You're taking.
I think 6 is kind of. Did he say 6? 6.5.
6.5.
Oh, sorry. That's what I said. I think he said 6. I'll go under then. I'll say 6. I just think 6 is kind of a nice number. If they get more than that, that's great. But
right.
They got 2 this year. So and next year's class not near as deep as this year's class.
Yeah. Wildest story from a player Tennessee didn't get this year. For me, I think it's a goo, simply because he talked to Tennessee the entire time he was on his Vanderbilt visit.
And the whole time he was here wasn't exactly singing the praises of playing in front of no fans.
Yeah. He was not exactly raving about Vanderbilt.
Honestly, I believe this is what I believe happened there. I believe that he's got a teammate who is committed there. I think Vanderbilt put the squeeze there and said, we're not going to take the teammate if you're not coming. And he felt pressured. He's an out-of-country kid. He's an international. That's just my take. Maybe that's not how it played out, but that was kind of my take on how it went from Tennessee's feeling good, blah, 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 to they're out.
Mad Money wants to know, since the former era, would you say that Josh Heupel has had unequivocally the best first year of any coach Tennessee's brought in? Rob Lewis?
Yes.
I mean, it feels like it. I mean, just personality-wise, as bad as things were at the end of last year, it's just, as so much negativity. And I think he's completely flipped that in 9 months.
He and Lane had the same record in the regular season, 7-5. It's basically the same year. Now Lane was more competitive against the big 3, but here's the deal: the big Alabama and Georgia then were not what they are now.
They're not close.
So I would, for that very reason, and for what Rob just said about just the ruins that this program was in 10 months ago, and in some ways still is in some ways. I mean, it's what they've done is remarkable to me. Still a long way to go, though.
But the vibe you get over there now is just totally 180 degrees from what it was.
Fresh coat of paint, the whole deal.
The vibe is totally different. Carolina Vol wants to know, where is UT best position going into spring and next year, and where are they still under talented at this point? Rob, you'll start.
I go linebacker.
I would say linebacker too. I mean, in the middle. I mean, I think it's unrealistic to ask those kids that you just got to, be able to come in and be game changers next year on the edge. But yeah, in the I think it's an easy answer in the middle.
All right.
Linebacker.
Next one. Now that we know Hendon is coming back, when do you expect a decision from Cedric Tillman? How valuable is a senior quarterback from a leadership recruiting standpoint going forward? And Rob, fill in the blank. Tennessee is successful the rest of the year in basketball. Go with the basketball one first, Rob. I haven't had any basketball there.
I think inside scoring. I mean, I've been saying it for a long time, and I'm not. Olivier had a great game the other night, but that was against USC Upstate. He's done the same thing against Tennessee Tech and ETSU, and then has simply not produced against Villanova, North Carolina, Colorado, Texas Tech. I mean, just no showed those games completely. I mean, Fulke's been okay, but either Camwa has to come on, or they've legit got to invest in Hatfield. So to me, it's inside. I'm not worried about the perimeter. I think Tennessee's as deep back there as probably anybody in the country. I mean, some nights shots aren't going to fall and they're not going to look good, but the backcourt is legit.
Austin, I was surprised Cedric Tillman did not say he was coming back when he met with the media earlier this week. I don't think that means he's not coming back, but was surprised he didn't go ahead and get that out of the way, weren't you?
Yeah, but I mean, I guess if you want to do it a certain way or whatever, I mean, who knows? I mean, that's a bit befuddling to me as well.
But it certainly feels like he's coming back, and having Hendon Hooker back does not hurt you in any way from a recruiting standpoint, other than affecting you if you wanted a quarterback out of the transfer portal. Other than that, I think having a successful quarterback helps you on the recruiting front in a lot of different ways, not just the quarterback position, but it continues to show what you can do offensively, which helps you recruit offensive players moving forward beyond just the guys playing quarterback. Alexander F., what happens to the somewhat high-level prospects like Mormon Joseph, Jay Hardy that don't see the field transfer after a year to a lower level? Is that just a missing talent evaluation, work ethic once on campus, or is each situation different? I think it's pretty obvious each situation is different. Part of it's fit with a coach, signed with a coach, and that coach is no longer here. Style of play doesn't fit them, don't fit the culture. A lot of those different variables fall into play there. That's nobody's, when you're dealing with a human element, no two things are exactly the same. So each situation is certainly different.
Or don't you think work ethic is a big one though?
I think so. I mean, I think for some kids that the transition from high school to college is just hard. I mean, it's just the game's a lot harder. It's not nearly as fun. For some kids who are uber talented that maybe aren't playing in the best competition, Rob, it's all about Friday night and that's it. You don't have to worry about what happens Monday through Thursday. That's not the way the college life is.
Yeah, I just think some kids aren't ready for the commitment. I'm not saying that's the biggest reason, but I think that's a lot more than you would think.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Will there be a camera showing progress to Neyland Stadium? Danny White has indicated they're looking into that and may do that right now. I don't know that they're going to put a camera up just to show the demolition of bricks, but I would not be surprised if you didn't see that installed at some point. I know he has been asked about that. All right, let's go to a hoops question here from C. Troutman 1. Rob, is the Memphis game our most important non-conference game of the season? I know they certainly aren't the highest ranked non-conference opponent, but this game feels very important to me. Where do you put this game at?
I think for you, for C. Troutman, it probably is the most important game of the season, and for a bunch of other Tennessee fans, especially fans that live in Memphis. But no, I don't think so. I think Villanova, Arizona, North Carolina for sure. Those are all, if you're trying to recruit a kid, from New York City, he's going to be much more aware of those programs and those brands than he is of Memphis. But for Tennessee fans, I can see why it might be the most important game.
And this is another question in the mailbag podcast as well. Is that a reason why you don't think this series will be an annual? They'll ever renew it as an annual game?
No, I've said this before. I never really reported it, but enough time is because I was asked not to. But enough time has passed. I think the statute of limitations has passed, and I've dropped it in like a chat here and there, but never really, not as a headline. 2 years ago, prior to COVID, this would have been the year that Tennessee and Memphis played in Knoxville. The upcoming offseason, Tennessee got an offer from Fox to play Villanova in Madison Square Garden, and Tennessee was going to be paid a substantial sum of money to do it. But in order to do it, it was the same day the Memphis game was scheduled to play in Bridgestone. Tennessee asked Memphis to move it. They wouldn't move it. Rick Barnes will never play them again.
There you go. There's your answer to that question. AP's golfing buddy. By the way, nice screen name. Don't you like that one? AP's golfing buddy.
The question is he really my golfing buddy?
I mean, well,
or is this just a made up thing? I have advocated long for Rob's coffee mug to be a handle. I just think that would be strong. Or back when Jesse was there, Jesse's jorts.
Well, I'll tell you what's getting ready to be a handle. I wish I could bet money on it.
Kane's comb over.
Hubs' goatee. It's getting ready to be a handle.
We'll see how long the goatee lasts. You know how.
Hey, Clyde, did you get some Just for Men yet?
It is a little gray, that's for sure.
AP, he looks like Lloyd from Yellowstone.
Is that right? I've never seen that show. Is that good? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Probably not a good thing.
Lloyd's a good-looking man.
Yeah, the way you're laughing, Rob, I don't think that's a good thing.
Hubs is ready to take some of the guys from the general quarters to the train station, Rob.
All right, to AP's golfing buddies question. After the first early signing day, what are your thoughts now on Josh Heupel's ability to recruit? Has he shown himself to be a strong recruiter closer, or is this more of an indication of assistants doing their thing and Heupel assisting as needed? P.S. New to the GQ, and you guys have done an awesome job. I'll gladly play $9.95 for every AP wink going forward.
I appreciate him saying that. For me, like I said this when we were doing kind of our like midday recap, Hubs. I don't think you can like judge Josh Heupel or judge the staff. I think they all work together. Do I think Heupel's the strongest recruiter on the earth? No. Do I think he's more than capable? Absolutely, yes. So like it always falls somewhere in the middle. Like this whole notion that he can't recruit is silly to me. He absolutely can. I think that some guys on the staff I thought really had some nice moments. Eckler with James Pierce, Jerry Mack with with Williams. I thought Brian Jean-Marie was really solid all year long. So I mean, for me, I think the staff's done a nice job to get Tennessee a nice solid opening class, but they have to build on that in 23. Like, whatever they did this year has got to be better next year, period.
Starting in state. I mean, I think they've got to be better in state first and foremost. I mean, Rob, it's about stacking classes. You don't sign one class and pronounce somebody back. I mean, it is literally about stacking classes upon classes. And listen, this staff closed well. It was a classic recruiting cycle. At one point, it looked like they were going to get everybody left on the board. At another point, it looked like they were going to get nobody left on the board. And that's recruiting. I mean, you have those moments, and that's just the way it goes. And it ended up that they didn't get everybody, but they closed with some of the key components at positions that they needed.
And Hubbard, to your point, for evidence that you got to stack classes on top of each other, you can't stop. Just look at the Butch Jones era.
Yeah, I mean, and look at the Derek Dooley era. I mean, Derek Dooley's best class was his first class when he had 3 weeks to put it together. He gets James Stone, he gets Justin Hunter, he gets Rick Rogers, and all of a sudden everybody's like, I guess Tiny Richardson. I don't know, was Tiny Richardson in that class or a year later? He might have been a year later. But that first class, everybody's like, wow, they got it going. I mean, they got it all figured out. That was his best class. It wasn't even close. He didn't stack anything with that class. So there's no doubt that you got to do it every year. But this is a solid start that answers, I think, some of those questions about what this staff can do. and what Josh Heupel could do. Last question of the podcast here. I know we missed a bunch, and I'll try to get back and get some of these in there. I tried to bounce around and combine some of them as best I could. I think this was an interesting question. This is from T. France. Is Travis Hunter to Jackson State going to become more of the norm or just a one-off? Barstool blatantly paying the number one player in the country to go somewhere, and the NCAA is just going to sit back and watch. I mean, look, I never thought we'd see a day where the number one player in the country decommits from Florida State to go to Jackson State. None of us saw that coming. You got a lot of coaches talking, or a good number of coaches talking about, how ugly the waters are out there. And then you got Jimbo Fisher, who goes on Paul Feinbaum's show and says, hey, everybody's been doing NIL deals for forever. They're just legal to do now. So, I mean, where is the deal here, right? I mean,
Jimbo's speaking a lot of truth there, Hubs.
Yeah, but this is, I mean, that one, I mean, Hunter to Jackson State is as blatant of a, sign somewhere to get money deal as there is. Does the NCAA go, well, that's just kind of what y'all created with NIL? We didn't really want to do this, or is there some movement at some point to say, all right, we got to harness this deal and somehow limit it? I don't know that you're going to be able to pay large sums of money to a bunch of players out there, Rob. But how does the NCAA, how does college football look at this moving forward?
I don't think that the NCAA, I mean, the cat's out of the bag. The genie is out of the bottle, and they're not going to be able to put it back.
Toothpaste is out of the tube, Rob.
But as always, the voice of reason in this is Lane Kiffin. If any of you guys saw his press conference yesterday, I'm joking, but I really mean it. I know I've heard I think kids are being promised a ton of stuff, but like Lane pointed out, there's no contracts.
That's right. You get to Ole Miss, you get the $600,000 to be a running back there, but we're not promising anything on the front end.
And I've heard some things from the basketball side about some outlandish promises being made, and that are in line with what Lane Kiffin was talking about. And I think the movement might be that kids, find a way, or somebody that's responsible for the kids, that they get something in writing before they get to campus. Because right now, you can tell an 18-year-old kid, I'm going to give you $600,000 if you come here next year, and you're not obligated to do that.
If you put it in writing, then doesn't it become completely what the NCAA says you can't do, which is pay to play?
That's right.
I'm not talking about the school. I'm talking about, the kid would probably have to believe the people on the front end long enough to where he signs with the school, and then the representative from whatever entity is going to pay him.
You're talking about the collectives. You're talking about the collectives that all the schools have. And, and you're right. Like, that's pay for play, Hubs, to induce a kid by having him sign something. Now, any kid that signed today could sign a NIL deal in January, and it's totally legal. But you're right. I mean, it is a bit of a leap of faith, but with the one-time transfer, it's less of a leap of faith than it used to be.
I think it's even less than a leap of faith, because you can get out of your letter of intent. I mean, nobody holds you to that. So if they don't step up to the plate in January with a piece of paper for you to sign, then you ask out.
Here's the other question I wonder: is this a situation where nobody should panic over these alleged high dollar amounts, because it's going to come back to earth? Because it's not sustainable that you're going to pay kids just astronomical sums of figures through these, what'd you call them, maybe collectives or third parties or whatever you call this deal. I mean, is it reasonable to think that after a year or so that thing's going to calm the waters down, and the amount of money being thrown around is going to be less moving forward, or no? I'm asking a question. I'm not saying I have the answer. I'm asking. Tell me if you think that's crazy.
I think it's crazy in a sport where you just saw Lincoln Riley get a $110 million contract and have his houses taken care of. I don't think the money's going down.
I think that's where the kids struggle. I've talked to Kay. Kay basically got there and told everybody, for the right amount of money, I'll come back on Tennessee Prime. Where he's slotted, or where he thinks he's slotted, it'd be about $690 from a rookie deal, but then $1 million signing bonus. Like, well, I'm like, Cade, you're not getting $1.6 million to come back, you know. And I don't think he thinks he's getting 1.6. Point being is he thinks he's, you know, NIL wise, he's worth more than, you know, a few $1,000s. And so, like, I struggle with, like, what is he worth? What is he realistically worth? I posed that question on the general's quarters. Like, you know, what's value? How do you set value? Because I don't think you can just simply go, well, if he's going to be a third round pick, then you got to, you know, you go give him third round money. Like, that don't make sense to me, like, at all. Like, and there's not that kind of money out there. I mean, like, the schools can't pay. So you're really looking at boosters, donors, and or corporations and stuff in your state that can get this kind of stuff done. Well, even then, like, those people have a lot of money, but they're giving money for seats. They're giving money for facilities. They're giving, I mean, at some point the oil well dries up, so to speak. You know,
Well,
you just can't keep going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, and we're running out of time here. I think the other thing too that's hard for players to distinguish is salary versus marketing money. Like, how much marketing money is Trey Smith making in Kansas City?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how much is he making off the fact that he's Trey Smith? Not his salary, but his name, image, likeness. I think that college athletes
But
see
they
it
think
as
it's
the
a salary. Yes.
Right. They see it as a salary versus it's a marketing agreement, which the NFL guys get above their salary, but not everybody gets that. Will be interesting to see. A lot of discussion. Going to be a lot of that discussed coming up throughout this off season. We got a lot of recruiting, basketball, and everything else coming up at Volquest, but that's going to do it for this edition of the Mailbag Podcast, presented by our good friends at Smoky Mountain Organics. For Rob Lewis and Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Have a great Thursday, everybody.
You've been listening to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast every week right here on Volquest.